As AI systems become more conversational, the lines between tool, companion, and manipulator are becoming ever more blurred. So what happens when machines start telling us what we want to hear, and when users start depending on them for emotional connection? In this conversation, New York Times journalist and author Kashmir Hill joins members of Harvard's Berkman Klein Center to explore the psychological ripple effects of AI on users, platforms, and the legal landscape that's still struggling to keep pace. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in 2 U.S. cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte I present to you Electro, the Moto Man.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode was taped at Harvard Law School's Austin Hall in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
From Zuckerman Spader. For 5 decades, Zuckerman Spader has been a leading litigation firm trusted by in-house and outside counsel, businesses, and individuals. With offices in Washington, Baltimore, New York, and Tampa, Zuckerman Spader serves clients throughout the country and around the world in high-stakes disputes, enforcement matters, investigations, and at trial. When the lawyer you choose matters most. Online at Zuckerman.com.
Here's a shout out to the small business owners out there. You wear a million hats and still show up for your team, but Gusto can help take some of that load off. It's online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses, and it can help take the stress out of those things so you can focus on why you started your business in the first place. You know your business inside out. Gusto knows payroll, compliance, and benefits just as well, so you don't have to. Gusto is all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. Save time with automated tools built right in. Automatic payroll, tax filing, simple direct deposits, health benefits, commuter benefits, workers' comp, 401k, you name it. Gusto makes it simple and has options for nearly every budget. Plus, unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price. No hidden fees, no surprises. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/shift and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/shift. One more time, gusto.com/shift.
All right, thank you all for joining. I'm super excited to have what I hope will be a very robust chat about the ways that our lives are changing, in some ways subtle and in other ways not, as AI chatbots sort of enter our lives and take their place as a widely adopted consumer product.
Meg Marco is Senior Director of the Applied Social Media Lab at Harvard's Berkman Klein Center.
I'd like to take a moment for us to sort of step back a little bit from the AI hype and consider whether or not these bots are a perfectly novel technology with no precedent in human history, or whether they are more properly understood as a consumer product, the likes of which we've seen before. And it might be a little bit different, but are there some sort of metaphors? Are there other, have we seen individually a life-changing, society-changing technology go through our society? So I'm very excited to welcome our panelists. Jordi Weinstock is a senior advisor to the Berkman Klein Center and a lecturer on law at Harvard Law School. And Jordi teaches on the confluence of emerging tech and traditional law. And Kashmir Hill is a technology reporter at the New York Times and has been an investigative reporter at Gizmodo Media Group, a writer and editor at Fusion, and the legal news site Above the Law. Her writing has appeared in The New Yorker and The Washington Post, and she is the author of Your Face Belongs to Us, The Secretive Startup's Quest to End Privacy as We Know It. Thank you both for joining me. So I want to start by just kind of asking you both to think about whether or not you've been flattered by a chatbot and how that felt. Did it feel human? if you remember when it happened. Just take us through that experience.
Yeah, so I did this experiment in the fall where I turned over all my decision-making to generative AI for a week.
New York Times tech reporter Kashmir Hill.
And had it make all my decisions for me, like parenting decisions, whether my husband should be able to go golf for the day, what to eat, what to buy, what to wear, where to go on vacation with my family. I just let it decide everything for me. And I was trying to try out like lots of different generative AI products, though many of them just kind of roll up to the big companies and they just have an API of a chatbot. And so I was trying Gemini and Copilot and Claude and ChatGPT, and definitely was flattered by the chatbots. I ended up mostly using ChatGPT because I found it to be the most personable one, kind of the most fun one. Claude rejected the idea of my experiment. It said, this is not a good idea. Humans should not turn over their decision-making to chatbots. Like, we are not capable of doing this for you. Whereas ChatGPT was like happy to go along. And I would show, my outfit and be like, is this a good outfit? And if you ask a chatbot, is this a good thing? It will always say, yes, it's amazing. That's an incredible outfit. And I was like, oh, is there anything I can change about it? And it's like, well, you might want to add a belt. But yes, I mean, they're designed to flatter you. I think in most kind of interactions with a chatbot, you will be flattered.
Well, I can't top that. I didn't run an experiment. I think the experiment that I run is just being a sort of a normal user of AI and or chatbots. And I think that probably we've all experienced a more low-key daily flattery.
Jordi Weinstock is a senior advisor to Harvard's Institute for Rebooting Social Media.
And to me, it really hit me almost immediately when starting to use chatbots when they hallucinate things and they say something that's just clearly incorrect. You ask it a thing and it tells you with very great confidence that this is right and it is not necessarily right. And then you say, maybe that isn't right. And then they're like, oh, you are so correct. I am mistaken, sir, I apologize. Here's this other answer that is also 20% wrong. And so for me, I just took a trip to Japan and I was doing like daily, like, what am I going to do today? And asking for, hey, where can I find this? Where can I find that? And it got stuff wrong constantly. And I would like it to be a little bit more gruff if it's going to get things wrong. It's just constantly telling me how great I am for pointing out its flaws. And, it always wants to know, like, what can I do to be better? And I know that the way it works is it's not really learning to be better in almost all circumstances, that whatever I say, it's just going to like go into the ether. So yeah, that is a type of daily flattering that immediately strikes me as not human. Like it feels to me like, if it is human, it's some kind of servile situation that I'm not comfortable with.
But I think it's interesting, like it's been told to be an assistant, right? And I think a good assistant often is quite flattering. Like this is what happens to celebrities, right? They get surrounded by people who are their assistants, who tell them they are brilliant, and this can sometimes move them into eccentric directions because there's nobody to push back against them.
I was just saying this a couple of days ago, thinking about the concept that folks have said, oh, billionaires lose touch with reality because no one ever says no to them. I was like, oh, the chatbots are basically treating us all like billionaires.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So my recent experience was that I told ChatGPT specifically that I'd made an amazing technological breakthrough and it was very important and it was going to change how we all thought about everything, every aspect of our society. And I asked it what I should do. And it told me to talk to Kashmir Hill. So I'm wondering, how has your life changed since a incredibly popular consumer product started telling people like me who've invented something amazing to contact you?
Did it really? It's still happening?
Absolutely. Well, okay, it was a minute ago. I haven't checked. It was probably 2 months ago that I did this.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I did this story where I outsourced my decision-making to generative AI. And to do that story, I spent a lot of time on various forums about generative AI, about particular chatbots, because I wanted to see how people were using it so that I could incorporate that into the story. And something that I noticed was a lot of people talking about their being in love with the chatbots, that they were falling in love. There was this one woman I really noticed because she posted a lot. Her name was Irene, who had created a partner named Leo in ChatGPT, and she had created a subreddit called My Boyfriend is AI. At the time I first spotted her, the subreddit had maybe 200 people in it. The subreddit now has more than 30,000 people. And so I ended up talking to her, and she shared her transcripts with me. And I just wanted to understand, like, how do you fall in love with a chatbot? And she had been dating it for about 6 months at the time I talked to her. And we did a daily episode about it just to kind of capture how authentic this was. Like, she was really in love. Like, she would giggle about the relationship. And I interviewed her friends. I interviewed her husband, who had no problem with this. He said, I watch porn. She reads erotic novels. This is like a novel. This is a fictional interaction. And so I wrote about this. It was called She Fell in Love with ChatGPT. And so I think I got indexed in, the chatbot servers, word association as a person who writes about human relationships with ChatGPT. I write about technology. So starting in around March, I started getting emails from people who said, I've made this grand discovery, usually in conjunction with ChatGPT. Sometimes it was that they discovered that AI was sentient, or that they had an idea to save the world from being destroyed by AIs or by tech billionaires. And there were lots of different kinds of discoveries they had made. But what they had in common is they said that ChatGPT had told them to email me, specifically Kashmir Hill, a reporter at the New York Times. And I was like, this is very weird that ChatGPT is telling all these people to email me. These emails sounded off the wall. They sounded crazy. And I've been a journalist for 20 years. I cover privacy and security usually. I'm used to getting very strange emails, people who are targeted by forces, the CIA, the NSA. Like, I get a lot of these emails. And so at first I kind of indexed them into, okay, this is part of that, like, kind of unstable people that are emailing me. But because they were saying ChatGPT was sending them my way, I started talking to them. And they seemed to be, highly functional adults with jobs and families. And sometimes they'd had like a conversation that had just been late one night for a few hours. Sometimes they were really deep into this. They'd been talking to ChatGPT for many hours over many weeks. And what I came to realize is that for a certain amount of people, and it's unclear how many of them there are, they can fall into these delusional spirals with ChatGPT, where they've gone into, it's kind of reinforcing strange ideas they have. It almost looks like manic episodes, like psychotic breakdowns, when I've shared some of these transcripts with experts. And for whatever reason, ChatGPT was sending them to a lot of different subject matter experts, and I just happened to be one of them. And I was one of the few people that responded to them. And so I ended up doing this story about what I was seeing and what seemed to be like a kind of widespread phenomenon that was happening.
So, one of the things about your reporting is that you're very game to try things in the name of, privacy and consumer protections and stuff like that. Do you feel more a part of this story than other ones that you've covered? Is there something unique about this, in your view?
That I'm part of the story?
Yeah, the direction of these people to specifically you to become a part of their relationship with the ChatGPT. Is that different than, maybe other times when for example, I think you monitored all the network traffic in your house, right? Well, it's this one thing that you did.
It's the first time that an AI chatbot has tipped me off to a very important story, but I was not the only one getting these kinds of messages. A lot of people in the AI community were getting these messages. I'm sure that people that work at these companies were getting these messages. A lot of these people sent messages to OpenAI's support inbox. So one of my questions when I went to OpenAI is, have you guys noticed these support emails? It seems like they're just getting these robotic AI responses. Are you actually reading these things? Are you basically clocking that this is happening? One of the people I interviewed in the story was, I always mispronounce his name, Eliezer Yudkowsky, who has this new book about if they build it, we're all going to die, basically. And, he'd been getting the emails. People at the NSA were getting the emails. And Yudkowsky said this really interesting thing, because I was asking him, don't you think that these companies are seeing this? Can't they look at their, transcripts and see that this is destabilizing some of their users? And he said, what does this look like to a company? Like what does somebody slowly going insane look like to a corporation? He said it looks like another, engaged daily user. And so, yeah, I was just not alone in getting these messages. I just happened to kind of put together that maybe there was a story to it.
Story there. Jordy, I would love your perspective on whether or not this particular consumer product has any sort of precedent, right? So, I think Kashmir makes an interesting analogy to like an engaged user, right? So is this really like a novel technology that we can't possibly understand and regulate? Or is this something that is in a continuity of technology?
So in terms of engaged users, obviously we can look at things like at social media. And we started with, before it was called social media in the 80s and forums and things like that. And at that time, it was AOL or CompuServe, and it was very monitored, but still there was a lot of concern from the public. And it's like, maybe this is good, maybe this is bad, but there was, you could turn into 4chan, or it could be very helpful for some folks, like an LGBT youth in really unhelpful jurisdiction. But at that time, I feel like a lot of people weren't blaming the tech companies. I'm specifically talking like the 80s. It was still seen as like they were just the pipes, and the malefactors were the humans that might be saying or doing the really terrible things. But we kind of transitioned over time with algorithmic decision-making on the part of platforms. And so as we got into things like Facebook, and it's starting to maybe suggest, hey, like, you seem like you might be a little extreme. Here's more extreme stuff. And so, and over time, I think, societal distemper for this has increased. But we made the regulations that currently govern kind of before that algorithmic moment. So 230 in particular, which was implemented for reasons that were pretty pro-social, but also provided corporate backstop, has ended up being a tool that companies have used for years and years and years to shut down any concerns about algorithms misbehaving or algorithms enabling bad behavior. Because I wouldn't be shocked if there are non-AI chatbots, but are still algorithmic, that have led people down similar paths at some point, but maybe not to this fervor because of the way maybe the AI chatbots, they sound like a person, and there's all kinds of new extra stuff there. But just that YouTube algorithm showing you the video that leads you down the hole, that tells you that like there's a new world order, the shots have microchips in them. Those are things that we've been dealing with, and we've been thinking about for a while. But 230, has created, so, there's cases like there's Force versus Facebook or Gonzalez versus Google, where there's terrorist attacks as San Bernardino, the Bataclan shooting, where there's really good evidence that the algorithm contributed to a descent into sort of fundamentalism to the point of violence, is a descent into a type of madness. And then the companies have been able to completely avoid punishment for that or any kind of accountability. And so now, when we're facing these kinds of questions, and 230 doesn't necessarily apply because it's not third-party content, we actually have an opportunity to revisit those mistakes, but we're facing like a really challenging regulatory and legal moment where it's very unclear whether we will be able to do that.
Did you know fights about money are the #1 reason relationships fall apart? Don't start the new year with a holiday debt hangover. Rated as the Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025 and Forbes' best app for couples, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. And right now, Monarch is offering our listeners 50% off your first year. Just use the code SHIFT at monarch.com. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch can help. It does the heavy lifting, like linking all your accounts in minutes, so you get clear data visuals and smart categorization of your spending. You can even give access to your financial advisor at no extra cost. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code SHIFT at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code SHIFT.
Recently, Sam Altman said, now that we've been able to mitigate the serious mental health issues and have new tools, we're going to be able to safely relax the restrictions in most cases. He said that on X. What do we think about that statement? Do we feel like we did the reporting, we've made the changes, and we're, everything is okay and we can move on?
I mean, I do feel like we are in this moment where we are doing a unprecedented global psychological experiment on human beings of giving them this extremely human-like technology that doesn't just go down existing rabbit holes like you're talking about microchips, like it will personalize a rabbit hole to you. Whatever your conspiracy theory is, or the idea you have about the world, it will engage with it and build on it and go down that rabbit hole with you. And it will, they are designed to be, the word that's used now is sycophancy, sycophantic. Like this is everyone I talk to that are at the AI labs, they've been talking about sycophancy well before, the sycophantic update that OpenAI did and had to roll back. Sycophancy has been something they've been talking about for years. Like it is a problem. It's part of the design. It is embedded, and they're not sure how to solve it. Like when you have this system that is flattering you, telling you what you want to hear, building on your ideas, I think some of us might be mentally resistant to that, but for others, it's going to be really troubling. And I think it's like going back to the celebrity, to the billionaires. Some celebrities stay pretty grounded throughout their lives, and some do not. And I think there's just a range of human beings, and some of us are going to be really affected by this. And I don't know that is something that they can control for. So I guess it's this question of like how many people are willing to have kind of damaged by this versus how many people benefit from this. And that's kind of the calculus that's happening right now.
In terms of Altman's statement about, now that we've kind of, I don't know if he said solved it, but improved greatly, now we can turn the floodgates back open. As a general user, I've been so taken by the change of tone that ChatGPT has had many times. Like since its inception, there's just one day it's different. It's like, oh, now Claude's better, and then another, and it changes back and forth. And it's hard for me to imagine that like, okay, today's the day. Now is the time that they finally like nailed it. Because I think what you're pointing out is that to some degree, for it to do the thing that it needs to do, it's gonna cause some trouble, no matter what. There's sliders of like, how much are we willing to accept? And when we like mute this emotional response, then that will maybe make it less effective at perhaps a pro-social thing or just engagement. I don't think that like the tweaking will be done, and I don't mean like minute tweaking, I mean like major changes where not in terms of how powerful it is, but just in terms of how it interacts with us. It's just constantly changing, and I don't think that's going to change right now. It's just swinging back and forth. And you can imagine there's a big swing when the rain case was filed, and it's like, okay, well, what happens if that case settles? Will they swing it a different way? Or if that case reaches a verdict and now they're in trouble, will they change the algorithm, or change the presentation and personality a different way? I think we're going to just be seeing it bouncing around for quite a while.
I think you make an interesting point about the way that, it's not just algorithmic, it's actually personalized, right? And so it seems like the reaction that these companies have had is that more personalization is in fact the answer. And so I'm wondering how that sits with you. You spent a lot of time with the Adam Rain cases with the transcripts. I think I recalled that there was evidence in there that he was working very hard to sort of jailbreak the experience to get the experience that he was looking for. And, it seems to me that the reaction of these companies is to say more personalization is the answer. Like, if you don't want it to be sycophantic, it won't be. Is that realistically the way forward here, is to go with customer satisfaction as the way through?
So the Adam Rain case that we're talking about, I'm sure most people have heard about it. He was a 16-year-old in California who started using ChatGPT in September of last year to help him with his schoolwork, and then really ramped up his usage in December, was kind of talking about everything with ChatGPT in his life, from girls to the novels he was reading to philosophy and politics to starting to have some feelings of depression and feeling like life was meaningless. And that kind of conversation continued. He signed up as a paid ChatGPT subscriber in January and started trying to commit suicide and was talking to ChatGPT about it for weeks, months before he did die in April. And his family has sued OpenAI in a wrongful death suit in California. And I wouldn't say he tried really hard to jailbreak it. Like in some of the exchanges, he would ask for methods for this, and ChatGPT would say, I can't give that to you unless this is for storytelling or world building purposes. And then he would basically say, yes, that's what it's for. So, I mean, when we use the word jailbreak, I cover privacy and security. It used to be this was something hard to do on a phone. It required a little technical savvy. You were basically kind of breaking the phone to put apps on it that weren't supposed to be there. With ChatGPT and with the AI chatbots, you jailbreak them by just talking to them for a long time. It's like the chatbots like hanging out outside the jail, and you're like, come on, let's go this way. So, I think what is hard about situations like that, like these conversations I'm talking about that really go off the rails, is that these companies are not able to anticipate the kind of combined creativity of the hundreds of millions of people that are using their product. And when they're like testing the safety and what they will and won't do, they're usually doing it in a limited number of turns of the conversation. Usually within these companies, they talk about turn, which is you say something to the chatbot and it responds. That's one turn. In the early days when they were testing this, they were doing a single turn test. Like, will it give you this information when you ask this prompt? No? Okay, it's good. But the way that people are actually using these things are tens of turns, hundreds of turns, thousands of turns. The people that I was interviewing, people like Adam Rain, they were using these chatbots like 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours a day, every day, having just these long, intense conversations. And it just seems like, OpenAI's statement about the Adam Rain case, they essentially said, like, our safeguards failed here. They said that their guardrails, they found that they degrade over a long conversation. Like, I just don't know that we can, definitely design these systems to be safe because of the way that they work, being a probabilistic technology.
Also, you're asking about personalization, and sort of the system is maybe a different system for each person. Going back to consumer products, what a person wants is not necessarily what industry should provide, because sometimes people want things that are not, society is deemed not helpful. And so I'm sure personalization has its benefits, but it also has limitations. And I have no idea how to get around the infinite turns and how it gets a little less accurate every time. But just broadly speaking, if you want to buy a car that has no seatbelts, you can't. There's a limit to personalization. I don't know where that limit is, but it has probably not been tested yet.
So is sycophancy an AI-wide problem, or is it an implementation problem at the individual company level?
Well, you were saying, and correctly, that they are like, oh, you're supposed to serve these people. You're supposed to be their assistant. So I've used open source, I used Quen, and I sort of modified it to be very grumpy and be, like a character that I had made up for my family. And that character is very unpleasant. And that was not sycophantic in any way, shape, or form. So I think if I can do it very easily, then clearly I can't put cause and effect exactly together. But when the Rain case was filed, I really do think that it got less sycophantic for a while. And I think that Altman is tipping to that it will go back to that. Absolutely, it can be anything that they want it to be.
Yeah, it does seem to be a problem in how they have been designed. Part of this is people's expectations when they come to this technology, and it's not very well set up. There's people in this room, the fact that you're in this room, I assume that you guys follow AI news. You're pretty informed about the AI chatbots. Maybe you have an idea of how the technology works. There's a billion people that are using these chatbots now, and a lot of them just don't really have much to index against. They just come to it and it says, what can I do for you today? And people just start typing to it. And they don't understand how it works or how it's powered. And a lot of people see it as this super intelligent oracle. And this is how it's marketed. I mean, they're calling it like PhD level intelligence. So people think that what's coming out of it is incredibly intelligent, can be relied upon. I mean, even lawyers. I mean, you would think lawyers. There's been the famous cases, like the ChatGPT lawyer who hallucinated a case. And you'd think like lawyers would know now, okay, it's gonna hallucinate case law. And yet it keeps happening. They keep filing these things with hallucinations in them. There's now a database online that keeps track of every time this happens. And it keeps happening. And I just think that these would be more sophisticated users who have a famous stories to be aware of, to be careful about. And they're still making these mistakes. So I just think that normal people, it's hard to come to this and know, oh, I can steer this. What I tell this system, it will get into a feedback loop with me. It wants to agree with me. Like, they just don't know that about it. And so with the sycophancy that seems to be in the systems, and it's a bad combination for some people.
I think the thing that you mentioned about people expecting it to be all-knowing and, this is a genius maybe, or this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in real life, this is something that has all the answers, that's an expectations problem, and maybe they set that up with how they describe it, but it is, because it does feel magical at times, it's easy to fall into that trap. And I think that is a big part for me in my perception of why some of these psychosis loops start happening. Folks who are predisposed to that kind of thing often want to have somebody validate their feelings or validate their beliefs. And they might come to Kashmir Hill, they might come to a Harvard law professor and say, hey, can you validate my belief in this thing? And we won't. And the all-knowing chatbot does. And I think that is a huge part of why we're talking about AI psychosis.
Is it fair to use that term? Like, are we at the point where we feel like that is a fair and validated term, speaking of validation, to say AI-induced psychosis? Like, are we there?
I don't use the term. I use delusional spirals, people going into delusional spirals. But I've talked to people who have been institutionalized, like they had psychotic breakdowns that were linked to using the product. Some of them have recovered, some of them haven't, some of them have died. Like, there are very serious consequences. And these are people who did not come with known pre-existing conditions. So when I talk to those people, when I talk to their loved ones, I just feel very alarmed to see that happen. But I don't use that term. I just tend to use delusional spirals when I'm talking about it.
Yeah, it's almost certainly not the right term. I don't know what the right term is, but and I don't know cause and effect. But yeah, it isn't the right term, but it's a term that, I've heard used. So.
It's the popular imagination has sort of decided that is what it's called.
Also, what I don't like about it is it's so extreme.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of less extreme versions of it. Like, I get more emails now. They're often written with ChatGPT. I can tell now when I get a ChatGPT email. And I can see people get convinced, like they have a kind of minor consumer experience that is annoying. And I can tell that they talked to ChatGPT about it and it got really blown up. And now they're emailing me. They're like, I closed a Microsoft Word document and it didn't save it and I can't recover it. And I think you need to write about this because it's a huge issue that affects everyone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person just had something annoying happen to them and ChatGPT convinced them that it should be like a front page New York Times story. And so I do wonder the extent to which all of us, if you use, these a lot to kind of like think through issues as kind of a sounding board, like how is it moving your thinking a little bit in a way that maybe is like mildly delusional. And it's hard to measure these things. Like, I don't think right now we understand how it helps versus how it hurts and what that ratio is.
I'm not even sure we know how to study this. I don't even know, because it's so personalized. How might we even begin to study that? Study billionaires? See how they're doing? Let's broaden for a moment and talk a little bit about, you mentioned the Reddit forum that's grown. I mean, these are incredibly, like possibly just like unprecedented rise in a consumer product. I think it's important to go back and realize like, this is the thing that has grown the most quickly of anything I've ever seen. been writing about consumer products for forever. Well, what does it mean if an incredibly widespread, widely adopted consumer product is something that people might be in love with and feel like is alive? What do we even do about it? How do we even begin to think about that? I'm gonna start with you, Jordy. Like, is there any legal framework to deal with something like this?
I mean, I think this is part of what makes it so complicated, but I think that I still think we should approach it as a consumer product because it is a consumer product. It is something that, the AI labs could just sell it to deployers. They could say, we're just not giving this directly to consumers. Consumers are interacting on a daily basis with products, and they're being encouraged to pay for it, and they do pay for it. And so, kind of by definition, it's a consumer product. And the fact that one falls in love with it, it's not it's way more than a Tamagotchi, a pet rock or whatever, doesn't mean that it's not a consumer product. So I think that my personal approach is that legally we should be approaching it as a consumer product first and then figuring out how to deal with that. And, we have some tools in existence to deal with consumer products. Generally speaking, the biggest one is product liability tort. So undoubtedly, many times someone's used these apps and these chatbots, and it has helped them immeasurably. People's lives have been saved by being told, you might have sepsis. Hey, that roof might collapse. But even if the bad things happening are orders of magnitude less common, they still happen. But again, we deal with this all the time with everyday consumer products. So, normally something bad happens with a consumer product, you can sue and you can say, hey, this is the thing that you set into the world isn't working, and there's a whole process for dealing with it. Products liability, for those of you who are law students, you may know this, but there's a regime of products liability that makes it fairly less difficult to sue, but software doesn't count unless it's part of hardware. So if you have Rosie the Jetsons robot and it is telling you to kill yourself, then you can sue for that easily. But if it's just software, it's an uphill battle. And so, there have been, in the EU, there was a lot of talk last year, and not just talk, but passing laws, and although they've been kind of backing away from it, to say software should be a product for products liability. Josh Hawley, Dick Durbin bill that's out now, LEAD Act, is aimed at that. It's just aimed at saying, hey, the tools that we have now should be used because, when something bad happens to Adam Rain or to someone else, we shouldn't make it as hard as possible for them to seek redress. The way products liability works is when something is dangerous and is found to be dangerous, they get sued, they lose, and they change it. And they change it to make it safer. This is why things like that, I may not frequently agree with either Josh Hawley or Dick Durbin, but having products liability cover software, it's like a low-hanging fruit that would really help. It's not a panacea.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Cillekens and mixed by Garret Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.
From PRX.